right, guys, here we are, man. Oh shit. We're gonna do this again. If you saw my post today, I've done this a couple times. This particular podcast on the subject. I just haven't got it right, maybe, or maybe it's just uh, maybe it was just like a dark time in my career, and I don't really want to feel good about it. I mean, I don't know, man. It was rough. Uh, you gotta you probably corrections people will get this a little bit more. I'm going to try to be real clear on policy and practice and so forth, and why some of the things. If you're not familiar with corrections and how things work, you may not recognize it. So I'm going to try to keep it clear. Um, I'm going to start off, man. I'm going to jump around a little bit because uh, there's a couple different things I kind of want to talk about, and one of them is hiring practices for CDCR. And if you work for CDCR and you've ever tried to promote or even move around as an officer that requires an interview or some discretionary decision by hiring authority, you'll know what I'm talking about. Because they just it's horrific. The the way things are done, and I'm sure they're done the same fucking way now as they were a few years ago when I worked. But to for any of those people that are leadership in CDCR to look any employee in the face and say that you have a fair and impartial hiring practice or process, you're just a fucking liar. Okay, you're a fucking liar. Uh, it was terrible. They instituted, what they do is they create processes that they can still manipulate. Even like they came out with the disciplinary matrix, because what was happening is say somebody got uh, in trouble for I don't know what the hell it is, for anything, but and then another person at another prison got in trouble for the same thing. The 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 punishment was completely and totally inconsistent, and it would be inconsistent within the same institution depending on who you were. CDCR really managed to fuck that up too. The ideology behind it was very good. um, but but even the fucking lawyers in CDCR, who are supposed to at least help keep it straight, they did more to help fuck it up than anything. They're horrible. They're stupid too. The ones that I dealt with were stupid. One's name was fucking Brad. I forget his fucked up name, but he was his nickname for me was Cut and Paste, because I went over his his shit as a so as a hiring, or not hiring authority, as an AW. What you would do you would lead a what's called a Skelly hearing, and basically what that is giving the employee an opportunity to explain their side of the story, anything that the essentially the employee wants done, and it gives somebody who's impartial, the Skelly officer, which would have been me, an opportunity to review the case against the employee. And this fucking guy, all he did was cut and paste from old fucking cases, and his shit was fucking horrible. How he kept a job, I have no, as a lawyer, I have no fucking idea. So, anyways, rant on that. But why I wanted to talk about the hiring process in this particular ward is one of the worst cases that I had ever seen, as far as just complete and total manipulation of the hiring process, and fucking one of your own employees over. So we had an opening for for a correctional counselor 3 position, and the position was under me, so I was the boss. I was also uh, the chair of the hiring panel, so I was in charge of making sure shit went correctly, and I was responsible for. And there's 3 people on the hiring panel. I was in, in charge of that hiring panel. All right, making sure everything went correctly, and so on and so forth. So what happened is we had one candidate, which and he was qualified because he worked at that same institution um, as a CC2. We all knew him well. A great guy, really hard fucking worker, awesome dude. And so we were actually excited that he wanted the job. Um, what happened? He had went from CC2, that's a correctional counselor 2 position, and he had took a promotion at the same institution, but his hiring authority was out of headquarters. So he actually worked for headquarters, but he was at the institution we worked at. But he wanted this other position. It was essentially a lateral back to that institution, under the current hiring authority and the one who ultimately fucked it all up. So what happened is we could have actually hired him without interviews. But the warden said, no, we want to do interviews. And I think he was just uncomfortable with hiring without interviews, even though there was only one person and the person was qualified. And I kind of understood that because I'd never had that done either, even though there was rules in policy that allowed us to do that. So I was like, okay, well, we'll fucking interview him. I mean, whatever. So we put together an interview panel, and so interviews in corrections for just about anything. But what they do is there's a list of normally between 6 and say 8 questions, and each question has multiple answers. Some maybe just 1 or 2, but some as much as 12, 15 possibilities. And the more of those answers that you hit within the answer, the higher score on that question you'll get. Each question is normally 1 to 5 points, with a total of, multiply 5 by whatever. If there's 7 questions, whatever the situation is. I think there was 5 questions on this particular, because I remember his score. So at any rate, we go in, we interview the dude. The guy absolutely smokes the interview. He scored 25. All right, so that's a perfect score. Okay, perfect score. That doesn't mean he answered every single one, but what it does mean, if there was, say, 12 potential answers, within a question, it's like, what would you do in case there was a riot on the yard? Now, that's not a CC question, but that's an example of a question that would give you multiple, answers. So the more of those he hit, the more, the higher the score would be. And we don't determine what that is. It's predetermined. If you get, say, there's 12 possible answers, and he gets 10 of them, well, that's a 5. Okay. And if he gets 8 or 9, it's a 4, or whatever the scenario would be. It's already predetermined, so we don't even dictate that. So he got a perfect fucking score. All right, so then everything's good. I think I go on a 1-week vacation, 1 fucking week. All right. So guess what happens? Nobody calls me while I'm on vacation, which is the normal thing. I didn't go anywhere. Even if I did, there would be some messages, or should have been, because the position was mine, saying that we're going to do something different. Well, apparently what happened is the wife of another warden, allegedly, our institution somehow found an application that she had allegedly submitted, but wasn't available before we actually conducted interviews, to let us know that. And they found it. So then they decided to real quick, let's go ahead and interview her, despite the fact that that's not shouldn't be the process. Go ahead and interview her. And guess what? She got interviewed and hired all within that one fucking week. Despite the fact the other guy got a perfect fucking score, there was no reason not to hire him. And we had done I had found out that individuals on the panel had had reached out to that institution that she was coming from and found that she had problems working with coworkers, that there was a lot of issues. So definite reason to just go with the individual that we had already determined that we were going to hire. But nope, that was a favor to another warden. All right, that was completely to me completely inappropriate and not at all what we should have been doing. And that was the decision made by our warden. Now, did they make it right on paper? Oh, I'm sure they obviously fucking did, you know. But how did that impact? Well, it impacted my relationship with my warden, because then I knew for sure, I already knew, what he was about, but it told me for sure he didn't give a fuck what I thought, because he was willing to keep me in the dark for that week and hire somebody for me. And that doesn't happen either. Normally, a warden will say, okay, kind of what is your recommendation and whatever. It doesn't mean they have to go with it. I get that. I'm not the hiring authority. But in this case, this was all in the dark. There should have been some communication from him to me to say why they're not, but nothing ever fucking happened. So that was dirty. So anyways, I'm going to get into, the really, the kind of the darker thing that really, and I hope you guys can feel, from your perspective, kind of where I was, or how important this thing was, because so many careers were in limbo or lost during this period of time. And the seriousness and the irregularities of what the warden was doing, and how he got not only me, but most of our management team crossed up, because he had his I won't say there some supporters, some people who just, I liked the dude and I wanted to be loyal to him, but there's a line where loyalty, you can be loyal right up until, I don't trust you, and I don't believe you are honorable and moral. I don't think what you're doing is that. And then you lose me. All right. Because I want to do the right thing. And sometimes the right thing is not going to be what I want, but it's what it's what you have to do. So yeah. So what happened is there was an inmate who was locked in administrative segregation. Now, this inmate, ADSEG, meaning he did something that warranted his placement in ADSEG and removal from the general population. So it's kind of a jail within a jail. Think of it that way. You're out in general population, you fuck up, and then we lock you up. All right. So that's where he was. So he had, I don't know if it was drugs, or I want to say it was some kind of a battery on staff. I think it was. So at any rate, coinciding with this, the warden, and this information came directly from the warden. So there is nobody who can call me a liar about this. The warden told me that, and this was, he didn't, obviously the inmate is separate, but at this same time, the warden told me that he was being interviewed by the local district attorney. Now, the same district attorney that had charges against our inmate that we had locked up, same county. So, and the warden told me that when he was interviewed, the interview was more of a that he was a subject matter, or he was a subject of the interviews as committing criminal violations of the law. And the warden was very worried. And he told me that. And that, and so then I'll get into what happened. So what happened is on the warden's own volition, he decided it would be a good idea, based on this interview with the district attorney that he thought he was going to get in trouble for. He must have felt like he was guilty, but otherwise, why do anything? So he goes and talks, and I'm talking about the warden. He goes and talks to this inmate, and the inmate tells him that he can provide the warden with information about dirty staff, meaning staff that are bringing in whatever, dope, cell phones, who the fuck knows, just dirty staff in general. And the warden worked out a deal with this inmate that the inmate would provide the warden with a document detailing all of the staff involved, exactly what they're doing, what they did, how they do it, blah, 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 all the bullshit. Okay. Now, first of all, this is so completely inappropriate. This is not. So to do this, the inmate was obviously expecting something from the warden, meaning a lighter sentence of some sort or whatever. So that's a violation of his rights. Okay, the warden is essentially dealing directly with the inmate outside of the presence of the district attorney and their lawyers, and outside of the presence of the inmate's lawyer. Okay, you just can't do that. When we lock that inmate up and charged him with a crime, we read him his rights. You have the right to remain silent, blah, blah, the whole, y'all see it on TV all the time. We do that. Okay. So then he has a lawyer representing him for his case that he would have currently had, that the DA, local DA, is in charge of prosecuting this inmate. So the warden is interjecting himself into that investigation or that case and essentially bargaining that he doesn't have the authority to do, and he's violating the inmate's rights in the process, which is why it's never done. Now, I will say there are times where my background is I was the investigative unit sergeant and lieutenant. Okay, so I know what I'm fucking talking about. There were times where we would work with the local DA and say, hey, this person has information we need, and this person is at the low end of what we're concerned about. They may have brought in dope, but they know who the dope dealers are, and that's who we really want. So if we can work a deal out to where they provide information and you make a deal on the case, then we're up for that. And this is completely outside the presence of the inmate. This is investigators and lawyers talking about prosecuting the case and how we're going to work that. Okay. That's not what was done at all. So he worked out a deal directly with that inmate who's locked up. And then he told my captain on my yard to have an officer, a specific officer, because the inmate told the warden that he doesn't trust our local investigative unit because they're not confidential, that they would let this information out as to him giving up the information, essentially. So the officer, who I have a lot of respect for, and the inmate picked the officer out because he had respect for the inmate. That's what he said at the end. He trusted the officer not to, put his business out on the tier. And the officer worked on my yard, so it was, totally appropriate for him to be engaging, the inmate. So that wasn't, it wasn't an issue. So the warden tells my captain, goes around me, okay, intentionally, tells my captain to, make this happen. So my captain talks to the officer, has the officer go to the ADSEG cell. We didn't have an ADSEG unit. We identified cells as AdSeg cells because we didn't have an AdSeg. So, it was not really relevant to the, to the story. But the officer goes to this inmate's cell, talks to the inmate, and the inmate says, I don't have a document, but there's contraband in the garbage can right across the way from the cell, because the person bringing it to me dropped it there, and it's there right now. And so the officer's like, well, this ain't what I was told to do at all. So he didn't really know what to do. Couldn't get a hold of the captain. Captain's in meetings. So didn't know what to do. So the officer decides he's going to let the inmate out to go get it. So the officer just didn't want to fuck with it. And I don't blame him. He's not an investigative officer. He doesn't know how to deal with it, and he couldn't get a hold of anybody. So his best, the best thing he felt he could do was this, and it was wrong. He let the inmate out. The inmate's on AdSeg status. He should have been in handcuffs if he came out of the cell, and just, there's multiple things wrong there. Shouldn't have been out. So that happened though, and the inmate went and got it and gave it to the officer. And I want to say it was weed. I'm not really sure, but the other thing the inmate had was a cell phone SIMS card. On the SIMS card would be all the information, texts and all the kind of shit that led to multiple introductions of contraband. It had the phone numbers of the staff. It had all kind of shit on it. All right. So he had that in his cell, but then he went and got, I think it was weed that was in the garbage can. So the officer puts the inmate back in the cell. I think he took the SIM card, I believe, but he left whatever contraband it was, and I don't know why he did that, but he did it. Then he left because the inmate had no, he's supposed to have a document, but he didn't have a document. And that's when the officer came to my office. And this is at this point, it's the first I hear about it. Okay. So everything that I've just described was learned after this situation. Completely a fucking shit show at this point. So he comes in, he's stressed out, and he's like, I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm in trouble, and I had no idea what to. And he lays all this shit out to me as far as what he was supposed to do. I'm like, dude, this is a fucking train wreck, man. And I didn't jam the officer up. He's a great officer, and like I said, I have a lot of respect for him. He just was in a situation, man. He was in a bind. So I know that this is a shit show. So I call the warden, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Why didn't you talk to me about this shit? Why? I have no idea this is completely fucked up. And I told him it's fixable right now. But you're going to have to write a memo, an 837. That's an incident report. This is a problem. Okay. He didn't want to do any of that shit. He just wanted to know where that captain was. And he was pissed off at the captain and pissed off at the officer. They let me know about what was going on and why he didn't do exactly what he was supposed to do and get the document. So, he was furious. So anyways, we ended that phone call and nobody was real happy. And it just got worse from there. So now let's recap. We've got contraband in the cell, and we've got contraband that wasn't really collected appropriately, but we got it. We've got dirty staff that we knew about before we ever did any of this shit, which should be more of a investigative unit situation and internal affairs. And, it should have been some kind of working with our internal affairs unit, which is outside of our institution. And that's who investigates dirty staff. but yet our warden is doing it all on his fucking own. Great idea. And now it's a fucking dumpster fire. So, so the warden's pissed, and the timeline of when I found out a couple of things, I don't really remember, but I know I had talked to the warden, and he had told me about this DA thing. The warden was pissed. He told me he wanted to fire the officer. He told me he wanted to demote my captain. My captain was doing acting time at that time, and he wanted to demote him immediately. And I mean, clearly the warden knew that he had shit the bed. All right. And he was panicking. And I told him that. I'm like, dude, you're in a fucking panic right now. You need to slow the fuck down and let's talk about how to fix this, because it is kind of fixable, but you're going to have to eat some crow. And of course he didn't want to do that. He considered himself like OG and, know it all and all that shit. In reality, he didn't know shit. So things got worse from there. It was once he started threatening my staff, once it became clear that he was going to include me somehow in the shit show that was going on, I thought, okay, I need to start documenting this shit. So I started writing, and if any of you know me at all, I write better than fucking Shakespeare. All right. So this was a well-written fucking document that articulated every fucking thing that happened in a way that everyone could understand everything that was going on. And I had my captain write exactly what he was directed to do, and the officer. All right. So I had all that shit. Now, the warden didn't know I had any of that shit. Okay. So because I told my people, I'm like, it's going to get a little ugly. All right. You got two choices. You know me. Yeah, I got your back, or where it's going to be taken. All right. Because he already wanted one demoted, the other one fired, with essentially no type of process at all. It's not how shit works. I mean, I'm sure he would have went through a process, but it would have been very, very twisted. So anyways, we get these documents done, and I'm holding on to them, and I'm because nothing says I've got to do anything with them at this point. I just have them in my back pocket, and of course he didn't know that. Then the infamous meeting happens, and some things happened before that told me exactly how this meeting was going to go. So the people who were going to be there, some things that he had said that told me that he was going to try to end some careers and save himself. And it was just a mess. So the infamous meeting. So the meeting happens. He called me and my captain into his office. Now, when we get there, there's about, I want to say 8-9 people in there, people that shouldn't even be there. I don't even think he knows what their actual jobs were, because if he did, he wouldn't have had them there. And some of them were like at an officer level. So they weren't officers, but they're at that, that level, like a CC2 specialist. Okay. Is essentially a, rank and file. All right. CC2 supervisor is obviously a supervisor. So, but a specialist is a rank and file. There was a CC2 specialist there. So then there was other associate wardens. I believe there was one, maybe two. There was the ERO. He was a fucking idiot anyways. And I can't remember. And there was several other people, but you could tell he kind of had what he felt was his team there. All right. And we were going to be fucking cannon fodder. Okay. Well, I don't do fucking cannon fodder. Okay, that's just it's not my fucking style, and I'm gonna speak up, and so I did. And when he started talking about, he was very very straightforward. He had he had ISU there. The investigative unit was there also. Um, so uh, he had the video of the inmate picking up the contraband and what the officer did, which I already knew. And what how he portrayed it was that the officer was in cahoots with the inmate in bringing the contraband in. Well, that was just horseshit. It wasn't true. It was his way of I guess in a way demonstrating that he'd kind of been duped by the inmate a little bit, and this was about the officer helping the inmate get this contraband and shit like that. So he wanted to fire the officer. He said that in this meeting that the officer should be terminated. um, and he really went after my captain, and then he told me that look at what this officer is doing. And what he meant was pulling the inmate out of the ADSEG cell and allowing him without handcuffs to freely go over and get contraband out of this garbage can. And he said that officer sure did do that, like it's kind of regular program over on your yard, insinuating that I'm running some kind of a weak yard and that I'm accountable for that behavior too. And I told him, I said, well, it's your fucking prison, so aren't you equally as responsible for what's going on in that fucking unit as I am, or does that not count? And oh, he got pissed off at that. Of course he did. You know. Then uh, and he's got his yes, and quite honest, they're yes people, and some people just sat there in shock because they didn't know why the fuck they were there, and they should have, and it's not on them. I mean, they were told to be there. But me and the warden were going back and forth and talking about. I can't remember if he talked about demoting the captain right in front of him there or not, but I told him, you ain't gonna fucking do that with my support. This shit show was on you. And I tried to be tried to be a little supportive of him, but once he got down to accusing me, then it got ugly. And I told him, I almost said his name. I said, Warden, why don't we do this? Because this is what should happen. Everybody in this fucking room should be doing a document right there, should be writing a document right now as to their involvement with what's going on, including you. Then we should refer all of this shit with a cover letter as to why we need an investigation and who we need investigated, to internal affairs about this inmate, about the staff that are alleged to have done anything, and let them sort this fucking nightmare out. And that's gonna be on you too. All right. So why don't we do that? And he didn't like that idea. And I said, well, better yet, why don't we just fucking call him right now? And he said, you call whoever the fuck you want to call, and blah blah blah, all this bullshit. And I'm like, well, I will. And then it kind of ended, and it was time for it to end because it was getting real ugly, and he was in a complete panic. I've never seen a warden panicking more than him in this meeting, trying to elude his responsibility, for what the shit show that he created. And if anybody was there and listening, you fucking know this is exactly the way this shit went down. Um, because there's people that are have at least know about this podcast and were in that room. So, and that could be listening right now. It's happened just like I'm fucking telling you. What he didn't know. Now, this is the part that he didn't know. Okay, is I had those memos. When I figured that it was going to go just like this, I wanted it to be before it got to the point it got in the meeting. Okay, timing sometimes is really important, especially when you're dealing with a dirty warden. And he was dirty. So what I had done, knowing that the shit show was coming, was I had basically cold called, and it wasn't a call, it was an email, because once you send an email, you can never unsend that motherfucker. I mean, you could try, but you can never unsend it. Once you hit send, it's gone. And I had made the decision that I was hitting send with all of these memos. All right. So, and that was the best fucking thing I could have done. So way before, hours before this meeting, I had hit send and all this shit, and I had detailed it in an email. And within minutes of and it was whoever was the chief or whatever their position is called of internal affairs, that's who I sent it to. And within minutes, I got a call back from somebody who represented the chief. Of course, the chief's not going to call me. They're going to assign it to, one of their people. And that person called me. And I'm like, wow, that was quick. And they're like, well, yeah, about your email. And I'm like, yeah. And they said, I've gone through, I've already read your letters. I read your email, and I've read your memos. And you just put together exactly what we've needed to piece together for an investigation on this guy that we've been working on for probably a year. So I'm like, well, it's all the truth. So I mean, however it works, it works. But I'm real concerned that some people are going to get wrecked here because of this dude. And so anyways, I was like, what do you want me to do? He's got me scheduled with my captain to go to a meeting in a couple of hours. And I know it's not going to go good, but obviously I got to be there. And so Mr. OIA, Office of Internal Affairs guy, he was some kind of a supervisor or something. A decent guy, but anyways, he said, well, all we need you to do is just, document everything that happens from this point. You don't need to actually do anything more except for that. And I said, okay, that's good. So that's what I did. So I went to that meeting that I had with the warden with basically knowing that whatever happened, short of me losing my mind and, dropping that fool in the meeting, I was going to be okay. So I wasn't really worried about anything. And of course the warden, he didn't know all that, that when I said, let's do document, let's write memos and call OI, I had already done it. So he was kind of at a disadvantage there. He didn't know that. And so shit went on. And of course, they've got their investigation going on now. And guess what? Like 2 weeks later, I'm under investigation. Shocking. Yeah. So kind of in addition to this stuff. And of course, this is going to happen, and there is I have some understanding. They had the ability to do something, so they did it. But here's what happened, and here's why I was put under investigation on the street, completely outside of corrections, and had nothing to do with corrections. I hired somebody to do work for me, and they got nasty with me and cussed at me. And so I cussed back, told them to fuck off, told them you're fucking fired. And I put it on paper, and I faxed it from work to them to confirm the fact that they are terminated. Okay. So this person contacts somebody. They knew somebody who worked in PIA, which is Prison Industry Authority. They're not corrections, but they do they build shit they for corrections, and I don't want to get too much into that, but it's a kind of a subset of CDCR, I guess. I don't know, but anyway, they would know who to contact if and how to do it. If they wanted to get somebody in trouble, they would know who to put somebody in touch with, and of course they did. And I found out who it was down the road, and we had some good words, and I called him a pussy, and I said, well, tell on me now, motherfucker. But anyways, they put him in touch, and of course they got in touch with the warden. And the fact that I used a we ultimately had the interview for this. And and let me back up. So when I found out I was under investigation, of course I called OIA, and I'm pissed. And I'm like, okay, motherfucker. So 2 weeks after I report on a warden, I'm under investigation. That's real fucking cute. Love that. And they're like, oh no, it doesn't have anything. I'm like, motherfucker, please, you know. And so no, we if anything happens, we're gonna note that, but I'm like, whatever. I just want to let you know my fucking opinion. And my opinion is just that. So let's fucking move on. And so that was it. But then we had the interview, and because when you're under investigation, they're going to do a subject interview with me. And I went by myself. I didn't take a lawyer or anything. There was two investigators from internal affairs, and there was a lawyer from the inspector general's office there. And they started asking me questions. Did you say fuck? And what, I'm like, yeah, of course I did. I have a First Amendment right to say whatever the fuck I want to say. And I was not working for corrections. This was in my personal life, and I said fuck. All right. I mean, are you guys the link? And this is almost verbatim what I said. I still have it on tape. I said, if you guys are now the language police, follow me around for a little while and I'll keep you busy. All right. And they were just like, no, it's not like that. We just have to ask the question. And we went off tape for a while, and they were super cool. So I didn't really, get too obnoxious with them, because they were very respectful. And they said, listen, we didn't pick this investigation. We were assigned it. We don't like it. We get what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. And they did try to trick me a little bit. There was something on there, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but something about somebody had called. He blamed me for calling him and saying I don't remember exactly what it was, but anyways, I told him I didn't fucking do that. I mean, somebody calls him. He's a dumpster fire, and somebody else calls him and says whatever, and that's got to be me. So it wasn't me. I didn't say it. And I didn't call him. And they said, well, we're going to go back to the office and run, basically run my phone to see if, to see if that, if it came from my phone and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I'm thinking you probably already did that. I'm thinking if I did it, you're going to be pushing over a piece of paper that shows your trail that says I did it, or you're just going to move on right now and know that I'm saying I didn't do it and you have no proof that I did. So I used to do your fucking job. So, and then they just kind of smiled and moved on. And so they got a little cute there. And what else? That was probably the highlight of everything that went on, and we got through it. They walked me out to my car and laughed and joked about it, and that was it. And the end result for that was, I know what it was, is when they asked me if I used the state fax machine to fax the letter terminating him. I said, yeah, absolutely did. And I said, so if that's wrong, because a fax machine is a phone line, right? And well, yeah. And I said, okay, so if I do a public public information request of all of the cell phone bills of all the senior leadership in the department, and respond and look at those, all of those numbers are only going to be to business related, no family members, no doctor appointments, no school stuff, nothing like that, right? Because that would be personal, and that's what you're saying I'm doing is using state equipment for personal use, right? and they kind of moved on from that a little bit, and and then they asked me if I would let an officer, out of a unit who doesn't have access. And I said, yeah, absolutely. If an officer either had to go home to do it or do it up in my office and then head back to the unit and take 10 minutes, well, fuck, that's no, people are buy houses and they need to fax shit. People do, have kids at school and people are doing all kind of shit. And, if they have to do something, they have to do it, So anyways, we kind of got through that, but they didn't do, they gave me training over that, which if basically that's the department's way of saying we'd really like to do something, but we can't, and we just want this to go away, but so we're just going to give you training. So I'm like, I don't give a shit, so that was fine. I mean, what am I going to say? They can train me anytime they want to. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened on that. Now let's revert back to the because that was kind of, being under investigation is not a good feeling. Even if you didn't do anything, you don't know how the department's, because the department will say you did something and make it an extreme when it was not an extreme issue. So you never really know what's going to happen, especially with all the other bullshit that was going on. So so what happened after, after this meeting, with the 8, 9, whatever it was, people, things around the institution got kind of ugly, because the chief deputy, I don't want to say what was on my side necessarily, but she was on the side of the right thing, and she knew the entire situation, and she understood that I didn't do a fucking thing wrong, that it was the warden that was incorrect. And her career was certainly impacted. I mean, when this warden, and I don't know if I didn't mention it earlier, so this warden, to get this job, he had already retired, and he had came back from retirement. Now, he'd been retired a long time, like I want to say like 10 years. Might not have been quite that long, but I think it was pretty close. And he worked as an RA, a retired annuitant, but not at the capacity of a warden. They may have paid him at that capacity, but he wasn't doing the work of a warden. And there are a lot of things, if you're retired, just pass you by. A lot of training, a lot of shit that you should know, and that this guy just didn't know. It wasn't, we're not in the 1970s at that point, so he didn't know what the fuck he was doing, and he just wasn't that sharp. And so, and the more important thing is that one of his best buddies was the Secretary of Corrections. That's the guy who works for or reports directly to the governor. That was his best buddy. Now, he knew, so the lady he replaced as warden, she was an acting warden also, and she was a shit show. Yeah, I had some words with her, because she didn't, she'd like to talk crazy to people, and anyways, we had a little conflict because of the way she was talking to me, and he was kind of in the middle of it, and he told me, he's like, Neely, don't give this 30 days and the picture around here is going to be completely different. Okay, so here's a chief deputy warden, because that's what he was at the time. He told me this, knowing that this warden was going to be fired, and he knew that he was going to be the next warden. So that tells you that relationship with the secretary, how close it was. Okay, to have that kind of information as a chief deputy, and knowing that you're going into that position, I mean, it was all just, it was set up. He knew it. Okay, and that's how shady the department is. All right, and there is qualified people out there who could have took that warden's job, and I'm sure done a very good job, but the good old boy club strikes again, and that's how he ended up there, and the department paid for it. Because not only I'm describing one scenario, there was so much shit that I I know about it, but since I guess I don't know firsthand, I'm not going to speak on it, but I do know this situation firsthand. Um, so what happened in the end? Um, so this warden, of course, ended up getting fired several months later, and everybody knew it. I mean, I was telling my, because my captain who did get demoted, and it was just back to his position. I say demoted, but he was in a voluntary acting assignment, so he could have terminated it, and the institution could have. And it's not a negative on him, but it felt like a negative to him, and it should have, because it was, and it shouldn't have been. Um, but but yeah, he got demoted. The officer did get in a little bit of trouble, but the officer was okay, and he was okay with whatever happened. And he had a little bit coming. I didn't like it, but also he did fuck up. Um, the chief deputy, the lady that I have a ton of respect for, and I'm not gonna say her name. People will know who she is. Ton of respect for her. Loved working for her as a warden. She moved up into the warden's position and did it for, I want to say, 2 years. They never confirmed her, and ultimately removed her. And I have every reason to believe that, at least in part, it was because when she testified, or when she was interviewed, um, she was truthful about this warden. And you just can't, with certain people in the department, no matter what they do, if you are in the position of essentially telling on them and doing the right thing, by the way, um, that haunts you. Okay, it fucking haunts you. And of course, I knew my career was over after that too. But I knew it a little bit before that, because number one, I was getting sick and tired of the fucking departmental bullshit. So I wasn't interviewing. I mean, I was rank one for chief deputy for over 5 years. Um, so rank fucking one. The first time I put in my paperwork for chief deputy, I got rank one, and you stay rank one from that point for over 5 years. I interviewed a couple times, and it was always, and by the way, it was always the friend or previous coworker of either the warden, or more importantly, the associate director of that mission that got the job. Okay. And I came in second, I think, 3 times. All right. So which second is just the first fucking loser in that situation, because you get nothing from it. But yeah, that's how that works. And that's how, the department hires. In the end, I don't know if this really, how it sets with the people that, that are listening, or if you fully understand how wrong this was. And the same warden ended a couple other careers too, by absolutely fucking lying. And man, I don't want to get into that. Um, I should get into it, but I don't know if I want to. It was some ugly ass shit where he just fucking lied his ass off, and two supervisors got fired. And it was ugly. It was real fucking ugly, and it had to do with the sexual misconduct of staff. And man, I don't want to get into that. But anyways, I know you motherfuckers are going to tell me to get into it. So if you want to, go ahead and tell me, and I'll listen. But for now, not so much. Yeah, so the warden got fired. I was telling the captain daily, that just hang tight, bro. This dude, because he just hated it that the warden was going to get away with it, and that's what you think for the longest time. And I was surprised that they let him, continue to show up to work with all the information they had. And like I say, it wasn't just this; it was, it was other things too, that I'm not really talking about. But this was so inappropriate, the way he handled it, and the way he dealt with people and all that shit. And the tension that he created in that management team was just, it was ugly. It was really ugly. And I liked just about all of them, I really did. Even there's one individual, and I really hate that we ended up um, not really um, good. I guess because I did like him. I really did. And the way shit went down, there was just no way that we were gonna be okay. We just couldn't, and I don't like that, because I want to do what's right, and I want it to be people to understand I did what's right. But if you are seemingly my, I don't want to say enemy, but if you support my enemy at that time, you get to be part of the fucking casualties at that point if I can make it happen. And that's just fucking truth, man. Um, you know, um, there was some other things that were going on. I'm not going to get into, but that hurt people that are close to me. And once you do that, man, it's like I'm gonna fuck you if I can, And I was in working in prison for a long time, and don't think I know. Don't, there's shit that I did that I don't even tell my wife about, and it made shit happen. And there's some ex-wardens out there because of it, you know. Um, but yeah, is what it is. Uh, Man, that's what I have for you, man. I think I'm gonna go, I think I'm okay with this one. Like I say, this is my third time doing this one. And I needed to feel right about it. Think I'm okay with this one. It was like a dark time, and I hope people just understand how serious it was to me. And maybe you're listening to this and like, well, that was a bunch of shit. But this was a 6-month situation that we were all going through in that management team, and we didn't know. Just about everybody's under investigation, or not everybody. Well, the warden, myself, um, you know, it was just ugly. And sometimes you don't even know you're under investigation. So people just were not good. So anyways, that's what I got for you today, man. Hope you enjoyed this one. I'm gonna do another podcast probably this weekend. I got to catch up. I've been having a good time. Me and my wife went to a really nice weekend last weekend. She surprised me with y'all probably saw it. So we had a great time, and I love that one. So anyways, you guys take care, and I'm going to play you out of this thing. Peace out, guys.